Hi everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Today I'm going to talk about what appears to be the last major taboo about to be broken by the Harley Davidson Motor Company. First I'm going to go over what taboos have they broken so far, what remains, and what the implications are of breaking this taboo. So first let's start out with describing what they've done so far. You know, it used to be that every Harley Davidson motorcycle ever manufactured was manufactured in the United States. That's no longer true. In 2019, Harley Davidson closed their Kansas City assembly plant. The only major assembly plant they have now, aside from component factories in Wisconsin, is the York, Pennsylvania plant. Of course, they also have plants overseas, particularly in Thailand. Those bikes are assembled for sale in Australia, Europe, and other locations. So that's a big change, and it's happened over a period of years. Also, a lot of people know by now that even a Harley Davidson assembled in York, Pennsylvania for sale in the United States contains a lot of foreign source components. Probably 30 to 40% of the components on a Harley Davidson made today in the United States is sourced from overseas. And they use intermediate companies, shell companies as it were, to sort of hide the pee about the foreign source of these parts, but you have components coming from China, Mexico, a variety of places throughout the world. And Harley's hardly transparent about that. You know, I mentioned the closure of the Kansas City plant. Generally, people think of Harley Davidson assembly factory in the United States and think it's all union labor. Well, I happen to know that just as they were closing the plant here in Kansas City, there were a lot of contract workers that weren't getting union benefits. So that was something that, you know, is a departure from what historically Harley had done with their workers. So let's talk about some big taboos that were broken recently. You know, Harley introduced the Pan America, the Sportster S, and now the Nightster liquid-cooled motorcycles using the Revolution Max engine. You know, Harley has a tough road to walk because they have a traditional core customer who's interested in typically larger touring motorcycles, V-twin engine that are air-cooled, but yet they're having a harder time identifying with the younger demographic in terms of performance, looks, and features. So to some people, it's outrageous that Harley would sell these liquid cooled bikes or say an all-electric motorcycle like they did with the Livewire. But many other people think that they've just been too slow to make these changes and they just need to keep their foot on the gas and get caught up with the times. Now, I know people have been talking about this Chinese-made parallel twin Harley Davidson clone, as it were. It's a parallel twin liquid-cooled engine. Comes in a 350cc and a 500cc version. And there's been a lot of talk online about whether these are actually going to be offered for sale in the United States or if they're just going to Harley Davidson's Rider Academy. And I talk a lot about Harley Davidson. It's a very interesting company to me, and it has cultural significance even today to wide swaths of the population. But I think if you try to figure out what Harley Davidson's up to, you can't rely on rumor or well-sourced individuals, supposedly, that are providing tips through anonymous channels. What you have to do is, I'm sure most of you are familiar with what's called the black box analogy, where you don't understand the inner workings of some black box where something happens, but you observe what goes into the box and you observe what comes out, and by comparing those two things, you're able to infer what happened inside. And I think Harley Davidson's very much like that. So if you apply that analogy, you're not really thinking about what Harley should be doing, but what they're likely to be doing, which I think is much more fruitful and less speculative, quite frankly. So let's take these Chinese-made motorcycles. You know, Harley's worked really hard to raise the entry-level price of their motorcycles, and it's not entry-level anymore. I mean, $13,500 plus freight, plus assembly, plus the surcharges, plus, you're easily at over $15,000 out the door with Harley's, quote, cheapest motorcycle. And what they did was they've eliminated the Evo Sportsters, and they've jacked the prices up on everything else. They got rid of their 500 and 750 street models. Those used to be in the $6,000 to $8,000 range. So leaves you with that nice dress at over 15 grand out the door. So here they come with these Chinese-made motorcycles, and some people are saying, hey, this is finally the chance for Harley to have a cost-effective entry-level motorcycle. And, there's some debate as to whether that's going to be just sold overseas, or they do bring them to the U.S., they're just going to use them in their rider academy. But I'll tell you where I think this is going from, again, the black box analogy. So the remaining taboo, really, for Harley, I guess there's two technically. It would be an engine configuration, whether it's air-cooled or liquid-cooled, that's not a V-twin. And these bikes, these Chinese-made bikes, are parallel twins. They're liquid-cooled, it appears, from the photos. But putting that aside, the real big taboo here that remains to be broken is for Harley to have 100% foreign-sourced and assembled motorcycle sold in the United States, particularly one that's been assembled in China. That's going to alienate a lot of their core customers. But why would Harley do that? And I think there's some real obvious reasons why they would do that. So I mentioned how Harley's entry-level bikes are now over 15 grand out the door. And again, it's not entry-level, but they're lowest cost motorcycle that you can buy by going to a Harley dealership in the United States right now is the Nightster. Again, $15,000. So what Harley's done as part of their hardwire strategy is to try and increase their margins as much as possible, be as profitable, to rake in as much cash as they can, because there's been a lot of articles online, like from Seeking Alpha as an example, that points out that Harley Davidson's going to be in pretty tough shape from a cash flow standpoint going forward. They have a lot of outstanding debt that has to be serviced. There's a lot of headwinds from supply chain and declining demographic for their core customers. I mean, I'm on the tail end of the baby boomer generation. I'm 59 years old. So the oldest baby boomers are around 70 in age. And, there's not a lot of 70-plus-year-old individuals buying any kind of motorcycles, let alone Harley Davidsons. I know there's some out there, and I plan to be one of these people that rides well into old age, but not everyone's like that. And even if they would like to do that, they're not able to for various health and other considerations. So it didn't make sense for Harley to say they would offer these Chinese-made motorcycles in the United States, even if you could get over the issue of them being made in China, because you would think that the margins wouldn't be very good. But what happens if you can sell either a 350 or 500 for around $8,000 maybe for the 500, and maybe $7,000 for the 350, somewhere in there. But it's made in China with very low manufacturing costs. You can have pretty decent margins. And I think this is the taboo. Harley's laying the groundwork for eventually assembling motorcycles overseas and selling them here in the United States. And to a lot of people, they think that would be the end of Harley. But again, look at what they're doing. Look at what where they're trying to go. And I think you'll have your answer. So if you look at the elimination of the Evo Sportster, what did Harley do? They killed it in Europe first, and then they killed it in the United States. And then they rolled out the Sportster S, the Pan America, and the Nightster. So they did what I would refer to as conditioning the market. They slowly prepared their customer base for this pretty significant change. And of course, they've changed a lot of things. They killed off the Dynas. They got rid of the twin cam in favor of the Milwaukee 8 engine. Now they've got liquid cooled bikes, electric bikes. So they're making a lot of changes. But again, if they can get to this last big one, they're not going to just suddenly drop Chinese-made Harley badged motorcycles in U.S. showrooms for sale. They're going to, again, condition the market. So how do they do that? They get them, the 350s, say, to their rider academy. And Harley will do something like say, oh, well, we just planned these bikes for our rider academy, but there was overwhelming demand that we make these available because people weren't ready to start out on even a Nightster as their first bike. So we're really responding to market demand. So next thing you know, it's probably going to take a couple of years, and they're going to start offering these Chinese-made Harleys for sale in the U.S. by all appearances. But again, why would Harley do that if they're trying to get away from selling quote-unquote cheap motorcycles under $10,000? Again, they can have very high margins, but that's not the main reason. If you basically get your foot in the door and start conditioning the market to accept, or some portion of the market to accept, a foreign assembled motorcycle being sold in the United States, then you could start doing it with more models. And it's similar to what happened, say, with Fender guitar. You know, Fender guitars for the longest time were only made in the United States. And then, I'm not quite sure of the sequence, but you know, they made them in Japan and in Mexico and now a slew of other countries. And so there were two tiers really of a Fender guitar. You could buy a cheap foreign-made, quote, knockoff, or you could still buy one that was made in the United States, typically with more premium components, but certainly at a much higher cost. And you could see Harley doing something like that. You know, maybe later on the Icon models or the CVOs would be the US made only models. And if you want something else, it's going to be assembled overseas. And Harley's going to be able to preserve or improve their margins going forward by doing exactly that. I mean, Jochen Zeitz, the CEO of Harley, has already stated that they plan to get away from internal combustion engines in their motorcycles altogether in the future in favor of all electric. So they're going to ride this out as long as they can. And again, the next major taboo is for them to sell a foreign-made motorcycle, and in this case, a Chinese-made motorcycle, badged as a Harley in the United States. I think it's going to happen. I don't think it's a great thing at all, but you know, Harley's turned the corner on so many things that used to be considered traditional. I mean, I defy anyone to go to a Harley dealership and find any apparel, you know, a single item of apparel that was assembled or manufactured in the United States. I mean, the last time I went, it was made in Bangladesh, Vietnam, even China. Harley branded apparel being sold at Harley Davidson dealerships. It's just a matter of time, given Harley's playbook, that they will sell a even Chinese-made motorcycle here in the United States, badged as a Harley at a Harley dealership. So let me know what you think about this. If you agree, disagree. Again, I'm not advocating for this. I just think this is the exact reason. It's the Trojan horse, as it were, for Harley to lay the groundwork for much cheaper manufacturing costs in the future. So please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and stay tuned for future videos. Thanks very much.